And the government spending is like bankrupting the country. Our interest payments on the national debt now exceed the Defense Department budget.
For reference, the U.S. defense budget stands at $800 billion annually, funding one of the largest militaries in the world. And our interest payments on the $33 trillion national debt is over $1 trillion and growing rapidly. This means taxpayers are footing a nearly equal bill just to cover past borrowing. It's a crisis that cannot be ignored. So how did we get to this point? Can the usual fixes like raising taxes or cutting spending really solve the problem? What happens if interest rates keep climbing? Is it time to think differently and explore bold new ideas to turn this situation around? Could Elon Musk be the solution? In this video, I will show you if Elon Musk's unique approach to solving complex problems through radical innovation and efficiency could offer a way to address America's $33 trillion national debt. We'll look at how his methods could disrupt government inefficiencies and ask if this unconventional thinking could make a difference. First, let me set the stage for you. America's national debt has ballooned to $33 trillion, a number so immense it's hard to grasp. To break it down, the debt owed per person in the US is staggering. With a population of about 330 million people, this means every American, from infants to seniors, effectively owes approximately $100,000 as their share of the national debt. So if a child is born today, he or she will owe $100K in debt. Yet, the US continues to borrow at a staggering rate, accumulating more debt yearly. The most alarming part of this is the rapid increase in debt over the last few decades. In the early 2000s, the debt stood at around $5 trillion. Now, it's almost 7 times that, and it's growing faster than ever. With Feds increasing interest rates every quarter and inflation, paying off this debt is becoming increasingly difficult. The US government borrows to fund everything from military spending to social programs, but the balance isn't sustainable. This ever-expanding debt comes at a cost. The interest alone on the national debt is now approaching $500 billion annually. This means that a large chunk of taxpayer money is going towards paying off past debt rather than funding current initiatives. If interest rates rise further, the cost of servicing the debt will increase, creating an even greater burden on the economy. Adding to the crisis is the inefficiency of government spending. Billions are lost each year due to fraud, mismanagement, and unnecessary programs. A bloated federal budget and insufficient revenue have created a debt spiral that incremental solutions like tax hikes or spending cuts have failed to address. As we manage an uncertain economic future, the need for radical change is clear. The old ways of managing the debt through incremental cuts, tax increases, or hoping for economic growth are no longer enough. We need a bold new approach to solving the debt crisis, and that's where someone like Elon Musk might come in. But how can a business leader whose expertise lies in innovation and cost-cutting apply those methods to the US government? Musk has a track record of turning struggling ventures into successes through unique strategies. Could his methods, like first principles thinking and radical cost-cutting, offer solutions for tackling America's $33 trillion debt crisis? Let's break this down, starting with his philosophy. At the heart of Musk's philosophy is a concept called first principles thinking. It's a problem-solving strategy Musk adopted from his background in physics. Rather than making decisions based on analogies or traditional approaches, first principles thinking means breaking down complex problems into their most basic components and building solutions from the ground up. On the other side, Musk's focus on innovation and efficiency can also be seen in SpaceX's approach to space travel. SpaceX revolutionized the aerospace industry by rethinking the entire model of space exploration. The company focuses on reusability, launching rockets, recovering them, and relaunching them to dramatically reduce the cost of space missions. This innovation strategy allowed SpaceX to compete with NASA and the most established players in the space industry. Now, think about the US government's approach to debt. Could the government apply Musk's efficiency-driven model to drastically reduce costs and waste in its own systems? Musk's innovative-driven approach forces you to rethink how things are done. What if the US government adopted this mindset to overhaul spending, eliminate inefficiencies, and reduce wasteful expenditures?
What do you call it?
I mean, I think the funniest name is DOGE, the Doge, Department of Department of Government Efficiency. Yeah, I mean, the idea is pretty simple. Is that like we've got this suffocating, massive federal bureaucracy, and we need to, and the government spending is like bankrupting the country. Our interest payments on the national debt now exceed the Defense Department budget, the Defense Department budget is like $1 trillion a year. Interest payments on the national debt are now higher than the Defense Department budget, and growing like every month. So it's not like basically we're on a path to bankruptcy. America's on a path to bankruptcy. So we have to cut government spending, or we're just going to go bankrupt, just like a person would that overspends. But it's even worse than that. Like we're spending money on all these these government agencies, and I actually asked the AI like how many government agencies are there, and the government isn't even sure how many government agencies there are.
Musk's critique highlights a core issue: inefficiency and wasteful spending. Musk's focus on first principles thinking, extreme cost-cutting measures, and relentless innovation helped him turn businesses in financial peril into industry leaders. Could those same strategies be applied to the US government to reduce its deficit and debt? If we apply the first principles thinking to the US debt, the first step would be to strip away outdated assumptions about government spending and budgeting. Rather than sticking to old models, the government could start from scratch, questioning what expenditures are truly necessary and whether current systems and programs are delivering the most value for taxpayers. By rethinking the entire framework, the government will identify areas where costs can be cut or reallocated for greater efficiency. This mindset naturally leads to another strategy that Musk employs: aggressive cost cutting. When Tesla was in financial peril, Musk reduced employee headcount, renegotiated supplier contracts, and restructured operations to maximize efficiency. He applied a similar approach most recently with X, formerly known as Twitter. Similarly, the US government could benefit from a deep dive in its spending practices to eliminate waste and improve overall efficiency. Areas traditionally riddled with inefficiencies, such as the military, could become prime targets for this kind of overhaul. Take the Pentagon, for example. SpaceX drastically reduced the cost of space launches by focusing on reusability and streamlining operations. The US government could mirror these principles by investing in newer technologies and rethinking outdated defense systems. Embracing more efficient, cutting-edge solutions could drastically reduce long-term costs while maintaining national security. Let's get back to Tesla for a moment. When the company was losing money in its early years, Musk didn't just ask for more funding, he changed how things were done. He focused on simplifying designs and improving efficiency, particularly with the battery packs in Tesla cars. Instead of sticking with the traditional expensive designs, his team worked to reduce the number of parts needed. For example, in Tesla's battery packs, they reduced the number of parts, saving money and lowering the cost of production. But how could this help the US debt? Now, let's think about how this could apply to the US military budget. The US spends over $800 billion a year on defense, a large chunk of the federal budget. This money often goes to expensive military projects, and many are inefficient. Take the Space Shuttle program, which costs the government around $450 million per launch. In comparison, SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket costs just $62 million per launch. That's an 86% savings per mission. Let's do the math. The US launches around 30 missions a year. This varies, but let's use this as an estimate. If the US were still using the Space Shuttle, that would cost 30 missions times $450 million is $13.5 billion per year. Instead, by using SpaceX's Falcon 9, the cost would be 30 missions at $62 million, which is $1.86 billion per year. The savings per year would be $13.5 billion minus the $1.86 billion is $11.64 billion saved annually. If the military adopted SpaceX-style innovation and reused more equipment, It could save billions over time, similarly to how Musk slashed Tesla's costs. This strategy doesn't just apply to rockets. It could be used to think about the US government's spending, especially the way the government handles its debt. For example, the US spends about $600 billion a year just on paying interest on the national debt. As the debt grows, this number will continue to rise, which is unsustainable. To approach this problem differently, we can apply Musk's first principles approach. Instead of following the current model, where the government borrows money and spends vast amounts on interest, we could start by rethinking the situation from the ground up. For example, let's take a look at how the government spends on social programs like Social Security. The Social Security Administration manages around $1 trillion in benefits, and a significant portion of that money goes towards administrative costs. These costs include outdated systems, complicated paperwork, and slow processing times. Here's where Musk's approach could provide a solution. Just as Musk focused on automating production lines to cut costs at Tesla, the government could focus on automating services like Social Security. Implementing technology like artificial intelligence could streamline the process, reduce errors, and cut down on paperwork. Under the current system, it takes several months to process a claim manually. But with Musk's approach, we could use AI to automate parts of the process, reducing the time needed in just a few days. By applying this method, SSA could operate more efficiently, saving billions of dollars on administrative costs. This could lead to significant savings in the overall $1 trillion spent on social programs each year.
Which I think makes sense.
And so is the other stuff they're doing just essentially bureaucracy run amok, where they just create jobs and create things to do and create a meaning for their existence?
Yeah. It's like a tumor. It's just going to keep growing.
Elon Musk's business strategies, like innovation, cost-cutting, and first principles thinking, have undoubtedly revolutionized companies like Tesla and SpaceX. But can these methods work on the grand scale of government? Governments, unlike businesses, are constrained by political realities, bureaucratic red tape, and social obligations. The US government operates in a far more complex and slower-moving environment. Laws, regulations, and political opposition can slow down or even block the implementation of bold new strategies. One of the key differences is the speed of execution. Musk can take immediate action to scale down operations or cut costs, but in government, each decision often requires navigating complex processes. For instance, when Tesla wanted to cut costs, Musk didn't need to go through layers of legislation or committees. He simply executed a decision. The US government, in contrast, requires approval from Congress, which often results in slow-moving reforms. The US government is a massive bureaucracy, and many of the departments and agencies are entrenched in their ways of doing things. This creates a challenge when it comes to applying Musk's innovative cost-cutting methods. Musk, on the other hand, is not constrained by public opinion in the same way. His decisions don't have to be approved by a committee or face the scrutiny of millions of voters. This gives him the ability to make tough decisions, like raising the price of Tesla cars to preserve profitability, without worrying about political fallout. Musk's approach to problem solving, breaking things down to their first principles and then rebuilding from the ground up, has been a cornerstone of his success. But can this methodology work in the public sector? In some cases, it could. Let's take a closer look at the US healthcare system, which is an area where many argue significant innovation is needed. By applying first principles thinking, you'd start by questioning the fundamentals. Why is healthcare so expensive? Is there a simpler, more cost-effective way to deliver care? Is there unnecessary complexity in the system that drives up costs? While this kind of thinking could lead to major improvements, it could also involve significant political hurdles. For example, cutting healthcare costs might include automating certain administrative tasks, or even applying technology like telemedicine to reduce overhead costs. However, many of these reforms would face resistance from entrenched stakeholders, such as the insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, and healthcare workers. In terms of the US national debt, Musk's first principles thinking might suggest a complete overhaul of the way the government borrows and manages its finances. Rather than relying on debt financing, which costs taxpayers trillions of dollars in interest over time, the government could explore alternative funding sources or find ways to reduce its dependence on debt. However, Implementing this would require significant reform across the entire financial system. If the US government adopted efficiency strategies inspired by Elon Musk's methods, it could save hundreds of billions of dollars annually. With the national debt at $33 trillion and $600 billion is spent annually on interest, bold reforms are critical. Defense spending at $850 billion annually could be reduced by 10%, saving $85 billion, through modernizing systems and adopting cost-saving technologies like AI and autonomous drones, similar to Musk's innovations at SpaceX. Administrative costs, totaling $300 billion, could see a 10% reduction with AI automation, saving $30 billion. In healthcare, where inefficiencies and fraud inflate a $1.7 trillion annual budget, blockchain and AI could reduce waste by 5%, saving $85 billion. Transitioning from outdated energy subsidies to green technologies could add another $10 billion in annual savings. Together, these measures could generate $210 billion in savings each year. Over a decade, this could reduce the national debt by $2.1 trillion and lower interest rates by $38 billion. While implementing such changes requires significant political will, the potential impact on the nation's financial future is immense.